This episode of the Western Outdoor News Podcast is brought to you by Abu Garcia. You don't need to be an Abu Garcia pro to fish like one, but you will need to be prepared for whatever nature throws your way. Bad weather, slow bites, and crowded waters are inevitable. One thing you don't have to worry about, your gear. Just like you, Abu Garcia rods and reels are built for the best days, but tough enough to make it through the worst ones too. They are an extension of the angler, with reels that cast further and recover line faster, rods that deliver power without sacrificing sensitivity. Abu Garcia gives anglers what they need to fish to win, whether they fish for fun or for a living. Visit abugarcia.com to see for yourself.
I couldn't believe what I was seeing up there. And even the staffers were saying they haven't seen it like that in 40 years.
Welcome to this week's episode of Western Outdoor News. This week we have Mike Stevens on to recap the Eastern Sierra opener after reporting from the field over opening weekend. It was wild, it was crazy, winds everywhere, but we'll hear it straight from Mike coming up soon. We're also joined by the newest member of the Western Outdoor News team, Daniel Labarbera.
Hi guys, Daniel Labarbera here. Happy to be joining the team at Western Outdoor News and looking forward to hearing about the Eastern Sierra opener from Mike. Later on in the show, we hear from Matt Florentino and Chris Arechaederra about the Coastal Social Saltwater Bass Tournament and the CCA's recent conservation efforts.
We can't do it alone. CCA, all these other NGOs, and we all need to work together.
Stay tuned to hear from Matt and Chris, but for now, let's jump to Mike Stevens to talk about that Eastern Sierra opener, and it sounds like it was a pretty wild weekend.
It was a success before it even happened because we actually were able to have an opener this year. Last year we didn't have one. It got pushed back, so everybody was really excited to get back up there at the end of April. The environmental backdrop this year was wind. Everybody knew it was going to be a factor. Crowds seemed to be a little lighter than normally, most openers, and I'm sure the forecasted wind had a lot to do with it. And it was everywhere. You couldn't really escape it this year.
Where did you see the elements the worst?
Well, the worst that I saw, I cover Crowley and Convict Lakes. I went to Crowley first in the morning, and I was ready for it to be crazy with wind there. I was all bundled up, but when I got there, it was actually pretty comparatively just a lot light breeze compared to everywhere else. And Crowley usually gets the worst of it. So I shed my jacket and went down there, and there was a breeze, and I guess it was really windy in the morning, but there were kayak guys out there. There were a couple float tubers, and boaters did fine. Around 9 o'clock, I headed over to Convict Lake. I couldn't believe what I was seeing up there. And even the staffers were saying they haven't seen it like that in 40 years. Wow. They have their own on-site weather equipment. And Brian Balarski, the owner of Convict Lake Resort, said that he was picking up gusts over 50 miles an hour, pushing 70 miles an hour at times. So they refunded all the boat rentals. There were no private boats out there. Most shore anglers on the most exposed shoreline went home. But there were some spots where people could get shelter from the wind, and they were able to get some fish. Mm-hmm. So, I mean, the fish don't mind. So it was just a matter of figuring out a way to,
they're already
to
wet.
Get out there. Yeah.
Yeah, so you definitely had to earn it if you were out there catching anything.
Yeah.
Did you do any fishing or just coverage?
I fished on the way up. I got up there Thursday, and so Friday, me and my brother and a couple other guys, we fished some of the canals around Bishop, which are part of the new waters that you can fish before the opener now. So we took advantage of that, and we caught a good amount of browns out of those creeks. Before I got there, those guys fished the Owens some. They fished some of the creeks coming down out of the mountains between Lone Pine and Big Pine, and they were able to get a couple. And then I hit intake 2 on the way up, and I got a couple out of there too. That was another place that's now open year-round with the new regs.
Mm-hmm. Okay, so we had some other boots on the ground, covering some other zones. Was the weather the big story of the weekend, or were some of the other zones better than others?
No. Well, yes, the weather. It was windy everywhere, and Ernie Cowan was down in Bishop. He was finding anglers having a rough time with it down there too. There's not a whole lot of water to work with down there anyway, but through Bishop Creek Canyon, North Lake was covered in snow. A couple of people did get up there and ice fish, he said, but it sounded like it was kind of a slow opener in Bishop. June Lake Loop, however, I think we always joke of which zone's going to win this year's opener, and I think this year it was the June Lake Loop, and that's where Rachel Von Fleck was covering it for us. There were not a lot of nice cutthroat caught in June Lake and bigger rainbows. There were a couple double-digit rainbows caught out of Gull Lake, but most of all, it seemed like, people were catching jig fish and, casting spinners and stuff that just was not happening at Crowley and Convict because of the wind.
Were anglers able to get out on the water up there at the loop?
It sounded like according to Rachel, that they were not renting boats up there either.
Okay.
For sure, June, I'm not positive about Gull, but for the most part, it seemed like boats were not part of the equation this year, other than Crowley, because, guys get their center consoles out there and their bigger boats are on Crowley. And, if they want to give it a shot, they're welcome to. But all the boat rentals, were shut down. Even at Crowley in the afternoon, the wind did pick up, and they did have to bring their rentals back in.
Yeah. Mm-hmm. Up towards Bridgeport, anything to report up that way?
That's normally where the big fish of the opener comes out of. You hear somebody catching a big brown on the troll at one of the big reservoirs up there. But I think it was a couple 6-pounders, maybe one that went 7 was the biggest fish out of Twin Lakes, and some nice ones came out of Bridgeport Reservoir. But the biggest fish of the weekend, 2 over 10 came out of Convict. We just heard today of an 11 that may have come out of Convict. I'm not sure which day, but it was after Saturday. Yeah. And so a couple, the ones I mentioned out of Gull.
Mm-hmm. So speaking of Western Outdoor News and our coverage of this, I know we just sent it to print. So as soon as you got back from the opener, we're planning on getting that coverage out. We already have our cover shot. We already actually sent it to print. So tell me about the coverage that people can find in their papers this week.
We touched on each area. So you've got coverage for Bishop, the Convict and Crowley area, June Lake Loop, and Bridgeport. Mm-hmm. So we've covered it from bottom to top, like we usually do. Mm-hmm. A couple of the stories are on wonews.com, but all of them are in the paper.
Tell me about that cover shot, and tell me about kind of the history of our cover shot after the opener. You said we had a long streak of the big fish.
Yeah, we always try to get the biggest fish of the opener on the cover, but it also has to be a good photo as well. So we have to have those stars have to align. But luckily, at least since I've been doing it, it's worked out. This year, the big fish on Saturday, it was not a great photo, and the quality wasn't there for the cover. So we went with another fish from the same lake that was only a few ounces smaller, and that Convict Lake fish made the cover this week.
Thanks again to Mike Stevens for that recap on opening weekend, and you guys can find all the coverage of the Eastern Sierra opener in this week's issue of Western Outdoor News, available on newsstands and at wonews.com. Also coming up from Western Outdoor News, we have the Lake Havasu Striper Derby. That's coming up on May 15th and 16th. And if you sign up before May 7th, which time is running out, sign up for the Striper Derby in Lake Havasu to be entered in to a Suntex houseboat vacation, courtesy of Suntex Marinas. Check out the events tab of wonews.com for all the registration info, and get ready for the Lake Havasu Striper Derby May 15th and 16th. Next up, we're talking about the Coastal Social. It was the saltwater bass fishing event this past weekend out of Long Beach. Chris Arechaederra and Matt Florentino join us to talk about the tournament.
Coastal Social, it kind of goes back probably about a year or so ago when Matt and I kind of got together with a fellow named Greg Garfinkel, who is in charge of the Calico Conservation Movement, that phrase, slow to grow, so let them go. And that kind of just sparked this whole event. Matt and I kind of got together and really just snowballed from there, whether he liked that or not. But other than that, it's been an absolute treat just to not only put on the Coastal Social, but also just to kind of get everybody in the bass community around it too. And it's been super, super. It's been a pleasure just watching it grow to what it is, and what it went this past weekend.
So tell me about this past weekend's event. How many anglers, and just actually let's start with a broad overview of the rules and where it took place for the listeners.
I want to say we had, what do we have, Chris, about 50 anglers?
Yeah, just at 50 with almost 20 teams too.
Yeah, we had just shy of 20 teams that were signed up for the event on the boater side. I think we had 8 anglers on the kayak division. So yeah, the way this splits out, we have a boaters division and a kayak division. So I would say Coastal Social is fairly unique in that we have, I guess 2 divisions to kind of service both private boaters as well as kayakers. This past event, we're calling it our North event. Essentially, this took place in 22nd Street Landing in San Pedro, was our weigh-in site. A lot of the anglers, they had the opportunity to really launch from anywhere they'd like to. So I would say we're a little untraditional. We didn't have a traditional shotgun start and things of that nature that guys may be accustomed to, whether they fished an SWBA or fished an SBS tournament prior. We kind of adopted a lines in, lines out format. Ultimately, I'm a tournament angler myself. So I try to create something that was unique, allowed ultimate flexibility, and allow a high level of creativity for anglers, to utilize the lines in, lines out concepts, to their advantage if they so please. So, yeah, it was kind of fun to see, some of the anglers and the fish are brought in. We had some guys running to Santa Monica Bay, some guys staying very local, some guys shooting south, some guys going to Catalina, some guys going to San Clemente Island even. It really made things interesting, I would say.
And the kayak side, it was super, super spread out. We had anglers as far down as San Diego. And just because of the different formats in both the boater division and the kayak division. For boater division, we were doing by weight, and then kayak division, we were doing by measurement. So with the help of our good friends at Tourney X, they ended up letting us use the software, and it kind of opened it up to where you could participate literally from anywhere and still get in on the action, which was fantastic.
Yeah. On that kayak side specifically, I kind of called it a remote format. Just the last thing I wanted to do was, I guess for safety reasons, is put the kayaks and the boaters all in the same arena, so to speak. It also allowed, participation. There was no restrictions as far as for kayak anglers to participate. So yeah, we had folks from San Diego fishing down south there. We had some guys launching out of Cabrillo, fishing in around, that Long Beach, San Pedro area. And myself, I know Jim Salazar, who won the event, we both launched out of Redondo Beach in King Harbor. So yeah, it's kind of similarly to the boaters. It allows that ultimate flexibility, and guys can fish, wherever they so please. If they're on fish up north, somebody could have been fishing in Ventura or Santa Barbara County line, what have you, and would still be, in the tournament, so to speak.
Yeah, that flexibility, I'm sure, drew a lot of those anglers in, and being so flexible like that just makes it so much, the barrier to entry is so much lower for everybody to get in there and have fun at this event. We actually had a little bit of Western Outdoor News representation. The big fish winner on the boating side was Brett Wilson. He's the brother of one of the sales reps here at Western Outdoor News. He landed a 7.8 pound big fish at the event, and he ended up, it looked like he landed in 5th place, so 7.8 ended up being about half of his total bag there, so pretty good catch for them. So tell me more about some of the other anglers. Were people getting limits, or was the fishing pretty good for everybody?
Yeah, I would say the fishing was a mix. So like, I would say, the nice thing is when you do these tournaments and things, and I've fished in enough of them and been in enough of them to, it's pretty quick to pick up off of the day of fishing once guys show up to the scales. A lot of excitement and a lot of smiling faces, eager to weigh fish. So we had, I think for me, and I was weigh master, so I had opportunity to weigh all these fish, and we had a number of really nice fish in that like 5 to 6 pound range. Actually quite a number of them. But yeah, Brett's big one, that 7.8 pounder was, I honestly thought it was a little bigger, but that was a nice sand bass. And they caught that up in Santa Monica Bay.
Wow.
And yeah, but I would say as far as the rest of the field, just looking at the standings, the top 3 teams, no mistaking where the better fishing was as far as this event went. But all top 3 teams were at San Clemente Island. Which honestly is not easy to do. I think I mentioned in the weigh-in, but if you're running to San Clemente Island, you really have a limited amount of fishing time, due in part with the travel time to and from. That's a 62, 64-mile run, depending where you're coming from. And if anybody was, on the water or anywhere along the coast on Saturday, we had some wind come up in the afternoon. If anybody's done that channel crossing and, a good, 3 to 5 foot chop with 15 to 20 coming out of the west, you're pretty much taking buckets from the port side for 3 hours, which I know for a lot of teams, they left the island, I want to say at 12 to 1 or so, and we're just making it back in time. So you're looking at legitimate 3-hour tour in that regard, and a beating along the way. But ultimately, they had tremendous weedless fishing, from what the guys are saying, some stuff on swim baits, but in different parts of the island, I'd say, yeah, looking at the winners, and I'll run through those guys really quick. It was, taking the win was Team Reyes Swim Baits. That's Gary Reyes, Mike Stanbridge, Steve Gardea. They had 17.54 pounds. Number 2 was Team Landisfine. It was Eric Landisfine, Jimmy Decker, Matt Koch had 16.68. And then in third was Team Ballast Point, Mike Lane, Scott Pethel, Shannon Perkins, with 15.31. But yeah, all the teams that went to the Clemente said that the bite is on. And just, I guess for the listeners' sake, I know that we've had quite a bit of weather the last few weeks. Not too many boats have been going out there. On the bass side, it's great, on artificials specifically. But there was also some yellows that were caught. Eric, Jimmy, and Matt Koch, I think they had 2 yellows, one over 20 and one around a 15-pounder or so. And those were on weedless baits, fish for bass. So as far as anybody kind of curious, wondering what's going on at that island and looking like we'll have some better weather here coming soon, I would say it's primed and ready for some catching. And who knows when, those bluefin, if they're there or not, I'm not sure, but looks like we're gonna have a good season. So.
Yeah, we're starting to see some signs that things are gonna get into full swing here for the summer. We're all looking forward to it. So speaking of the future, what is next for Coastal Social, and how can people get signed up?
Yeah, so I guess I know just as far as coming down the pipe, we have our next event actually isn't until the fall. So the way we design these events, we're kind of, this is just like test case, honestly. Like Chris had mentioned, we were chatting about a year ago. This is like the middle of, pandemic quarantine, and, talking with Greg, I kind of had this idea. I've always mentioned to Wayne at CCA and kind of other folks of I just wanted to, as a tournament angler and more of a private boater, kind of artificials only bass guy, ways of integrating CCA for the private boaters. So this was the best, I'd say, opportunity for us to get involved and to give back. So with all these events, it's direct support for CCA California. So all entry fees, the t-shirts we sell, all that goes directly back to CCA California and eventually us, the anglers. So yeah, the next event will be in San Diego, and that's in this September.
September 25th.
Correct.
So,
yes.
So where can they sign up? Coastalsocial.org. That's just a wild guess.
Yeah, really simple, but yeah, that's the website. So guys can learn more. It's coastalsocial.org on the website. Just go into the tournaments area. You'll see the 2 events that we have. If you look at Long Beach, you'll have the results. And if you look at San Diego, it'll show you more info on that event there. So we have that one earmarked for September 25th. Our registration deadline is September 20th. We're still trying to finalize our location. We're looking at a couple different places. That's in the works. But yeah, same format like we had up in the North event. Lines in 6 a.m., lines out 2 p.m., weigh in at 3 p.m. And we'll both have a boater division and a kayak division.
So it'll be very similar to the format, format.
Yeah, with, hopefully a couple, also some twists as well. I mean, obviously this was our very first event of the whole series, and San Diego is only going to get better and will get better as time goes on there. But we've got some really cool stuff planned for September. And also it's worth mentioning, we can't do it alone. I know AFCO is a huge sponsor. We already mentioned 22nd Street Landing. Mike Morrison and the gang over there has been nothing but hospitable to us. Dana Landing, Penn, Daiwa, Okuma. Typically what we'll do is we'll give, like what we did on Saturday, we gave goodie bags away to all the anglers. So it's definitely worth it. I know Okuma kicked in some soft steel and some fish lab, minnow baits as well to everyone, along with war baits. And also, the guys at Promar, they actually fished it with us, and they've been super, super generous. But ultimately, guys, we cannot do it alone, and we can't thank our sponsors enough, including Fishing Syndicate, Angle Accurate, and Hobie as well. So definitely looking forward to September 25th. And hopefully more's in store there in the fall.
I would say kayak anglers, you're the ones that were missing from the North event, and you allowed me to get second place. So I encourage, and I know it's a little tougher up north for the kayak guys as far as access, launch points, so on and so forth.
Further paddles.
I'm still feeling my paddle to PV that I kind of went on Saturday. But I'm really hoping to see more kayakers at the San Diego event. And I'm pretty sure we'll see them. So.
Oh yeah, San Diego is definitely more kayak friendly. I feel like it's ready for it. So that's Coastal Social. While I have you, Chris, I wanted to get kind of an update on CCA and what the current what the current hot topics are. We have your Santa Monica Bay white sea bass release. Tell me about that.
Yeah, so that was a couple weeks ago. The guys over at Marina Del Rey Anglers, Keith and the gang over there, you guys all know about the white sea bass program, the Oarhead program, and all these facilities up and down the coast. They have facilities that house these juvenile white sea bass, and every so often, depending on the season, they have to get released. So with the MDR group, they actually got the Betty O out of Marina Del Rey Sport Fishing to help them out and release all the juvenile white sea bass that they had over by that pier over there, right outside the jetty there in MDR. But that happened. I think we released close to a couple thousand juvenile white sea bass all right there, and that's really that's kind of the most effective way that we've found releasing these fish, because not only do they kind of get outside the harbor there, but also the big sea lions problem we've been facing up and down the coast there. So all in all, very, very successful release. We're hoping to do more of those. Utilizing the sport boats. Thank you so much to SAC for letting us do that and arranging for that as well. But overall, fantastic. We've done the same method down in Dana Point with those guys over at Dana Wharf with the Sun Fun and Mr. Brian Woolley. We did that one a couple of years ago, but hopefully looking to do more of that here in the coming months and coming years as well.
Absolutely. Yeah, it's good to see. I mean, definitely replenishing some of the resource here is what CCA is all about. So it's great to actually see when it comes together and see the plan unfold. It's great to see.
Absolutely. And, hopefully with, our bill AB 1949 last year going into effect this year, hopefully that opens up a little more funding. Hopefully that opens up maybe another species, hopefully. I know in the past we've released the California halibut juvenile fish there down in San Diego and Mission Bay specifically, and all really good news on the hatchery front. Definitely looking forward to the future there.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and speaking of looking forward to the future, just another thing that CCA has been heavily involved with is 30-30 and kind of the World Surf League kind of doing a 180 on their stance with that. Can you tell me about how that came about and kind of your guys' reaction to the World Surf League kind of backing away from being pro 30-30?
Yeah, and I think and thankfully for me is I work here full time at AFCO. I would say Casey Shed, Bill Shed, once that all initially came about, one, I would say we were just a little taken back. Just once that push was out there, a big part of that is that a lot of us that fish. I know Bill specifically, Casey as well, myself. We're all watermen. So to see that petition, it was, and essentially what it was WSL and WSL Pure had a We Are One Ocean petition, trying to really just, I guess, spread the word on the 30 by 30 initiative. get their audience, from the WSL, which essentially is millions of folks that follow and are fans of, essentially, professional competitive surfing, involved with that move, that push for 30x30, which I myself personally, I'm for doing things for the ocean, doing things for the environment, so long as fishermen are, have inclusion in all of that. So as was written at that point in time, there was mention of divers, mention of surfers, mention of, all sorts of other activities with the exception of sport fishermen, which ultimately are, there's quite a number of us licenses, and we've, parts of our license fees go back to different things. And, many of us, myself, I've helped, I've actually helped volunteer at the white sea bass hatcheries, and I've actually released fish myself in King Harbor and Redondo. And, I care about the resource. So for us to just, have zero inclusion in that was, the first red flag. And essentially from the AFCO side, we called foul on that. If anybody was looking at social media, I would say a month or so ago, we put out a few initial posts with a big red X on that petition saying, don't sign this until WSL has some clarity on specifically what the petition's for, and really pushing that, sport fishermen need to be heard, specifically anything of that matter. If anything, what's happened with MLPAs in the last few, recent years and whatnot, we're just, we're a lot more in tune about as far as those sorts of things. So thankfully, I know Casey Shed, Bill Shed, we reached out directly to the WSL surf rider folks of on that side. And I guess the good news is that, we had very conducive conversations. They listened and they appreciated kind of our outlook and kind of our position on everything. And we essentially worked together to make an amendment in the petition. So, we made a post recently, shedding light to those, those recent talks. They recently amended that petition, the We Are One Ocean petition on Earth Day. And they have inclusion now and line items specifically, not calling out, single hook sport fishermen, as a negative, aspect of, I guess, of what 30x30 is looking to help, for the oceans. That was great, and we didn't do it alone. Ultimately, we had the support of folks like the CCA. We had support from many other, other sport fishing, even spearfishing brands out there, a number of them. Big shout out to CJ Hobgood and the guys at Salty Crew. They helped to bridge some of the gaps there with the surfing community. And ultimately, we had the sport fishing voice, so to speak. We stepped up and we got their attention. They listened. We shared ideas, and ultimately, we got what we wanted out of it. Essentially, is inclusion for that petition, and not making sure that fishermen aren't seen in a negative light. Because as written, it did kind of have a slight negative aspect as it relates to fishing. So
yeah, and to kind of piggyback what Matt said. If you think about it, fishermen are the original conservationists. Conservation is what we're all about as anglers, as with us, it's at the CCA. But, ultimately that all sounds good. And, we're all for conservation and the theory sounds really, really good, but it's only natural for the fishing community to be included in that conversation as well. We can't do it alone. CCA, all these other NGOs, and we all need to work together. There's the goal of 30x30 and all that, which, like I said, sounds really, really good. It's how we're going to accomplish that. And that's going to take a lot of work here in the next couple of years, obviously, with 3030 fast approaching, or 2030 fast approaching. It's going to take a lot of work. Right now, there's actually webinars. You go on our website, ccacalifornia.org, you'll actually see we posted a schedule of webinars that anglers like all of us can get involved there. And, definitely go chime in, definitely listen in, and, make your voice heard.
A big thank you to Matt and Chris for talking to us about all the important work that the CCA does, especially here in California. It is so important. And one last reminder for the Striper Derby, if you sign up before May 7th, you get entered into the raffle to win that Suntex Marina's houseboat vacation. Sign up before May 7th. The event takes place May 15th and 16th in Lake Havasu City, Arizona. Thanks for listening. We'll see you at the Striper Derby, and we'll see you next week on the show.